As a black man living and working in a world where the color of one's skin can profoundly affect one's destiny, I can at times be forgiven for being tentative in predicting the outcomes of my actions. To varying degrees, they can often be beyond one's own personal control. And those are the words of Professor David Devine, a graduate of Edinburgh University in Scotland, Aston University, Birmingham, UK, and the London School of Economics, UK. Professor Devine has extensive experience spanning some 20 years in community development issues operating at practitioner, policy, and academic levels. He joins me now in the studio to talk about this and even more. Welcome to the show, Prof.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here.
Indeed, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
I don't think I've done enough justice to introducing you. Is there any other thing that you like our audience to know about you?
Yes. In essence, what my life has been involved with over 70 years now, I'm 70 now, over 70 years, is that I'm fascinated with individuals' voices.
Right.
Their life stories, how they make decisions, and why they've made certain decisions in life. And my work essentially revolves around those voices that are not acknowledged,
Right.
not listened to, not valued. That essentially has been a major theme throughout my working life. And part of that theme emerged when I was very, very young, because I grew up in an orphanage,
Right.
having been abandoned as a baby at 3 months by my single parent white mother and my black American father. And the result of that is that early on in life, I began to see how your personal circumstances, your family circumstances, can have a profound impact on how you proceed in life.
Right.
And I had to, at a very early age, in my teenage years at high school, make a decision. And that decision was, I am not going to have my future dictated by my past.
Right.
And that is absolutely critical. So I make no excuses for things that I don't quite work at well.
Right.
I make no excuses. I feel that the responsibility is mine to be as good as I can be.
Right.
And to be as educated as I can be, and to work very, very hard. And that is why I was very successful at school, have a number of degrees, and have worked in a number of professional areas at the most senior level.
There's so much to learn from you, Prof. Let's get into the research work that you've done. A couple years ago, you did a lot of work around immigration, healthcare, social housing, and the likes. And I'm sure there were a lot of lessons you can share with us tonight. And so basically, we want to ask, what are some of those examples, given the current housing situation that we face here in Nova Scotia, that you feel our viewers should be aware, perhaps the government who is listening?
Well, I think the government has already started, that's the present administration within the province, have already started to seek answers to how it can address the present housing crisis.
Yeah.
We know about the housing crisis because it's visible in the streets, in the tents that we see, in the homeless walking around, asking for money, and so forth and so on. Right. So the government has noted this. It is an embarrassment to the province, and it is an outrage. It needs to be addressed. In my view, you have to, in terms of addressing housing need, you've really got to make sure that you have community partnerships, community groups in the province who are credible,
Right.
and who can actually lead on identifying needs in their particular areas, and then are given the resources to create the housing necessary, and manage it in order to alleviate the distress of the so many homeless individuals that we see on a daily basis within the province.
Right, but let's zero down to the African immigrant community here. And let's say, for instance, we have so many groups representing the various countries in this province.
Yes.
And they are probably willing to be part of what's going on, at least to solve this problem.
Yes.
How can they participate, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, they've got to be asked. They've got to be encouraged
Right.
to collaborate with government on the need.
Right.
And once you've done that, once you've acknowledged that they have something to offer,
Absolutely.
and that's still a question,
Right.
once the government have acknowledged the various community groups from a variety of racialized communities, you've got to basically say, how can we use your expertise, your knowledge, your involvement with the community?
Yep.
How can we use that and help you create the necessary resources in order to address that particular need? And so the reaching out has to be from the government.
Absolutely.
To those particular groups.
Yep.
The government has to recognize what value those community groups have to offer. And once they have created these collaborative partnerships, then help those particular community groups to actually provide the services that are needed. Because they have the skill, there's huge amount of talent within those particular community groups.
Yes, and it's not different. Sorry to cut in. It's not different from healthcare. So I was going to ask, what strategies you think need to be in place from probably the government or organizations here to be able to bring the kind of healthcare services that the disadvantaged communities such as the African immigrant community here are facing? What should they do in terms of strategy?
Well, I've just finished a year's contract with Nova Scotia Health Authority, where I led the Nova Scotia Health Authority on such issues.
Right.
How can we address the deficits in health which result in poorer outcomes for racialized communities, the disabled, immigrants, other racialized communities outside the Black community of African descent, the indigenous community, and so forth and so on, all have poorer health outcomes than white people. Why is that? It's because the system has been created by white people for white people. And it has not in the past, and still does not, recognize the fact that differing communities from a variety of cultural and racial backgrounds have differing needs.
That's right.
And therefore, you've got to address that. But in order to address that, you've got to have knowledge. And you've got to have people in the system from those communities who can help the organization be much more relevant to everybody within the province.
That's right.
Not just one community.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the crux of the problem. And so part of my work was to recommend to Nova Scotia Health Authority how they could redress the imbalance.
Right.
And I have to say that Nova Scotia Health Authority and other health partners have taken up the challenge of providing equitable health services for everybody. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, but the commitment is there, the dedication is there, the leadership is there, and they are beginning to address much more fully hiring practices which will encourage individuals from a whole variety of communities to be part of the health system in order to inform the health system as to how to address the particular issues that need to be addressed.
Yes, there's also this talk about lack of vision and sense of direction among the Black community. I've mentioned this when we have in the chat the interview, and that's what a lot of people, that's the narrative that is out there, that probably that community of people of color are not pushful enough. They kind of lay back and stuff like that. Do you agree with them?
No, I don't. I think what we've got here is we've got a variety of Black communities of African descent here. You've got those who have a long tenure in terms of generational tenure to Nova Scotia, who have identified themselves, and that is being increasingly amplified at the moment, as a unique Black community.
Yeah.
And that is acceptable. That's absolutely right. They know their value, they know their history, 7+ generations, many African Nova Scotians can claim that, plus. Then you've got others from Black communities around the world who have arrived here and have no generational linkage to Nova Scotia. But they're here to stay, and they want to stay. And they are coming in increasing numbers.
Right.
So therefore, we've got to address this diversity within the Black community of African descent. So when you talk about vision and laid back, I would certainly refute that, because the vision is there. It simply needs to find a channel in order to be used in ways where the vision can result in practical successes in various areas.
But do you see enough of aspiration, some kind of resilience, aggressiveness to pursue and also be part of what's happening? Because I find that you don't have that representation at certain level in government and leadership around the province, even the country itself.
There's no debate about that, but let me get back to this vision piece and vigor in terms of trying to get certain things done. The challenge in terms of African Nova Scotians who have been here for generations is that they have a rich history.
Right.
And they have seen over the generations how limited the response has been from decision makers, including government, in terms of the needs of African Nova Scotians. And so therefore, and I feel that that lack of responsiveness from decision makers, from government, has led to a feeling of, listen, we have no faith in government. We have no faith in these decision-making bodies to change things. And to some extent, that has led to a feeling, well, we've tried before and we've not got anywhere. So really, why bother? Part of that is around, and that's led to, why should I stand for office and get myself elected to those decision-making bodies, to government, when frankly I've no faith in that government. I've no faith in these decision-making bodies. Why am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
Now, what we have with the incoming Black individuals of African descent, the immigrants, like myself, who have been here for 20 years, I don't put up with such nonsense.
Right.
I'm a successful professional man and have been for decades. I am not going to allow myself to be disrespected, not acknowledged, and downgraded because of my color.
That's right.
So I will make demands. I will put myself forward for election. I will make sure that I am prepared for office and I am prepared for success.
Yeah.
So I come from all of this with a different way of seeing things. I'm not going to be allowing myself to be segregated.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow myself to not be listened to by decision makers.
That's right.
And this is the attitude that is needed. But that's not to disrespect those others who feel that we've done all this before and not got anywhere, so why should we? I'm not disrespecting that view.
Right.
I acknowledge that view because I'm very interested in people's voices, and those voices need to be heard. So I want to find ways to encourage those voices to be heard and to assist in the hearing of those voices.
Absolutely.
And there's not enough of that assistance around because government doesn't reach out as much as it should. The health system doesn't reach out to the communities as much as it should. The housing officials are not reaching out as much as they should to the various communities that need the housing the most. And that's all got to change.
Yeah, I agree with you, but talking about segregation, we already having that within the Black community, and this is an ongoing debate, as you well know. So one would think probably unity is something they should look for to bring all this and give it the number that it requires to be able to forge a common front and see what it can get within the table where decisions are made in this Nova Scotia. So what is this difference? What are these differences that we are seeing between the Black immigrant community and the indigenous Black, Africans here? What's really going on? How much do you know about this?
Well, quite a bit actually, because 2 years ago I was the keynote speaker at a conference organized by the Nova Scotia Brotherhood and Sisterhood. And at that event, there were 440 registered Black males. It was for Black men. And it was historic. 400 Black men came to this conference at Dalhousie University. And the vision that I was talking about at that conference was one of unity. That even although we are from different places around the world, even although we have this huge diversity amongst ourselves, and that diversity is very clear, both in terms of color, languages spoken, histories, aspirations, politics, you name it. And all of that came out at the conference. And what we were talking about was vision. And individuals in that conference stood up and were talking about their particular experiences, histories, aspirations. The vision is there within the Black communities.
Right.
It's not absent. The question is, you've got to allow it to be channeled into ways where you can act on that vision, resource that vision, and get things done. Now, moving from there into representation of Blacks in government, you and I both know it's minimal. It's minimal. Right. And there are questions as to what impact those individuals of color, few as they are actually having. And one of the major successes in the last few weeks has been the election of Twyla Gross.
Good.
And that's a phenomenal achievement. Against the odds, she won the election. And the interesting thing about Twyla Gross is that she had a pedigree of success in her previous roles.
Right.
She was respected. She was credible. And she will make a profound difference to the Black representation within the leading administration now of government.
Right.
And now she's a cabinet minister. So the vision is there. The vision is there within African Nova Scotians who have a generational link to the province. The vision is there in terms of the incoming immigrants from around the world. They want success. They are determined to be successful. They have vision, and that all needs to be orchestrated, managed, and moved forward in ways that will create success for everybody, not just those who are Black, of African descent, but everybody.
So let's talk about sustainable development within the marginalized communities, such as the Black community. And I want to ask, what role do you think education and training has to do with such sustainable, anticipated, or desired growth within such a marginalized community?
Well, it depends what we mean by education. When we talk about education, we have this notion that somehow you've got to have certificates in this, certificates in that. You've got to have degrees in this, degrees in that. Education is much more than that.
That's right.
Education is much more than that. Education and learning is about listening to one another, learning from one another, doing things collaboratively together, knowing where you're going, being clear about why you're doing certain things. And this is the sort of education that I feel needs to be encouraged and nurtured more within the province. Just because somebody has a PhD doesn't mean to say they know very much. Okay, and so we've really got to.
Of course, we have. I mean, some economies in the world. Like, I would say, like China, for instance. Where there's no emphasis on certificate, but what you can do, what you can bring on board, right?
Absolutely. And this is really important to note, because some individuals feel that they can't contribute because they're not qualified, in quotation marks, to contribute. My view is every one of us has a role to play. Every one of us should contribute in the ways that we feel we can. And that's really, really critical. So they've got to be encouraged, they've got to be nurtured, and they've got to be respected.
That's right.
They've got to be respected.
Absolutely.
And then they've got to be harnessed in terms of collaborative working, in terms of joining in, trying to create something new, something better.
Something better indeed. But you've been here for over 20 years. And one is interested in knowing the experience you went through by asking, what are those challenges and opportunities that are there for immigrant Black, your brothers, basically, from outside, from within? What will be those opportunities and challenges that faces this group of people?
Well, first of all, you've got to believe that you can be successful.
That's right.
So you have to have a evaluation of yourself which is positive. You've got to believe that you can do something. You've got to believe in yourself. So self-worth is really critical. And you've not to allow your self-worth to be downgraded by anybody, whether it's your own brothers or anybody else.
That's right.
And sometimes your own brothers will try and put you down. Well, I won't put up with it. And the point is that needs to be challenged, because we've got to work together.
Right.
And that is something that we need to do much more of. So in terms of education and learning, for me, it's about not only knowing your own worth, but it's about listening to others that you're trying to work with. And allowing yourself to learn, because some of us feel that we know it all.
That's right.
You see?
I know.
And therefore we don't need to learn from you, because what do you know? Because I know it all. That sort of thing.
That's right.
And so therefore that's out. So you have to knock that on its head. So you've got to allow and encourage others to work with you. And so you've got to have mutual respect. You've got to have mutual acknowledgement of each other's worth. And you've got to come to the table feeling that and acknowledging that everybody has a role to play.
Yes, you have a lot of rich connection network with people who make decisions in this province, I would say. But talking about how to leverage these relationships you have, people want to know, what are some specific policies you think government can come up that will help address these distinct challenges that the immigrant community is facing here?
Well, first of all, you've got to ask the racialized immigrant communities what the issues are for them. Now, we may think we know.
Okay.
We may be acting on some of those because we feel that we know, but we've not taken the time and the effort to reach out to those immigrant communities and talk to them about what their issues are.
Right.
Once we've done that, then we can together with those communities groups seek to address those.
Right.
And then you can leverage what connections you have in terms of leadership, and you're right, I do have these connections, to see how those senior influencers in the province can help command the resources and the further contacts needed in order to address these issues. So it's all about connection.
Right.
It's all about empathy. It's all about reaching out. And it's also about being humble.
Absolutely.
It's about being humble. And some of our leaders are not humble at all.
We need to start teaching them to be humble.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, yes. And that could well come at the next election. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Elections humble them, right? So, Prof, as we wrap up finally, I just wanted to ask another question.
Yeah.
From the media perspective, what we are currently doing right now, how can the media be leveraged, to be able to change some of the stereotypes that are out there about the Black community, as far as those negative news about the Black community is concerned? How do you think the media will be able to play that role in helping straightening out history and stories around the colored community?
I believe that the media, including the social media, plays a critical role. And in my experience now, over the last 20 years here in this province, I have had excellent relationships with the media and worked with the media extensively. And I believe that the media here in the province is alert to how it has at times been unhelpful in terms of portraying racialized communities, including the Black communities of African descent.
Right.
However, it's also very, very clear that there has been changes within the media over my time, 20 years.
Right.
And I believe you've got a number of very, very prominent journalists and broadcasters generally who are very, very sensitive to the increasing diversity of the province and are willing to learn.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, some individuals, including some broadcasters and some media giants, feel they know it all, and they don't. They've got to be taught by those of us from the communities about the issues within our communities, and they've got to be informed. Now, sometimes they don't want to be informed, but you've got to find the resources and the contacts in order to make them informed.
Yeah.
And this has happened, and I stand by the media here in the province.
Thank you so much, Prof, for coming in and sharing your perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Indeed. That was Professor Devine, a notable leader in the Black community here in Nova Scotia. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more updates. You can also reach out to us by sending an email to communityupdateNS@gmail.com. I am Prof Okoy, and I'll see you soon.
Community Update is brought to you with the support of the following organizations, businesses and individuals: Heritage Canada, Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, Cactus, Bailey O, M4 Media, and Shokoto.